August 1230 BC. The most powerful man in the world stands outside a sealed chamber in Alexandria. Behind that door is a woman Rome has feared for nearly 20 years. A woman accused of seducing kings, manipulating emperors, starting wars, and nearly destroying the Roman Republic itself. Moments from now, Roman soldiers will break down that door. But when they enter, they will discover something that turns this woman into a legend. Her name was Cleopatra. For over 2,000 years, she has been remembered as a beautiful queen who used her charm to control powerful men. But what if that story is wrong? What if Cleopatra wasn't simply Rome's greatest seductress, but one of history's most dangerous political masterminds? A woman who came closer than anyone else to placing Egypt on top of the Roman world. A queen who turned exile into power, defeat into victory, and two of Rome's greatest generals into her strongest allies. But every empire creates enemies. And the closer Cleopatra came to ruling the Mediterranean, the closer she moved toward catastrophe. Because hidden behind the glamour, the wealth, and the romance was a dangerous game that could only end one way. This is the true story of Cleopatra, the queen who almost conquered Rome. Cleopatra VII was born in 69 BC into one of the most powerful royal families in the ancient world. At least, that's how it appeared from the outside. She belonged to the Ptolemaic dynasty, a Greek Macedonian bloodline that had ruled Egypt for nearly 3 centuries since the death of Alexander the Great. Their palaces glittered with gold. Their temples towered over cities. Their wealth was legendary. But behind the marble walls and royal ceremonies, the dynasty was rotting from within. By the time Cleopatra was born, Egypt was no longer the unstoppable superpower it had once been. The kingdom was drowning in debt. Corruption infected every level of government. Political rivals circled like vultures. And to the north, a new giant was rising: Rome. With every passing year, the Roman Republic grew richer, stronger, and more ambitious. Many feared it was only a matter of time before Egypt became another Roman prize. She entered a world where danger was everywhere. But nowhere was it more deadly than inside her own family. Her father, Ptolemy XII, was a weak and deeply unpopular ruler. His critics mocked him as the flute player, because he seemed more interested in music and luxury than governing a kingdom on the edge of collapse. His rule was so unstable that he was driven from Egypt by angry rebellions not once, but twice. As a young girl, Cleopatra watched her father flee his own kingdom. She watched powerful allies abandon him. She watched enemies grow stronger. And she learned an unforgettable lesson. A crown offered no protection. In the Ptolemaic dynasty, the people most likely to kill you were often your own relatives. Brothers turned against sisters. Sisters turned against brothers. Poisonings were common. Assassinations were expected. Exile could come without warning. The royal palace wasn't a home. It was a battlefield disguised as a palace. Every smile could hide a conspiracy. Every celebration could become a funeral. Every ally could become an enemy overnight. Most children would have been terrified. Cleopatra was paying attention. While others fought for power, she studied it. She immersed herself in politics, diplomacy, history, and languages. Unlike many rulers before her, she learned the Egyptian language and embraced Egyptian traditions. She carefully presented herself as the living embodiment of Isis, the beloved goddess of motherhood, magic, and kingship. It was more than symbolism. It was strategy. Even as a young woman, Cleopatra understood something many rulers never learn. People do not follow power. They follow belief. And if she could become the symbol of Egypt itself, she could command a loyalty far stronger than fear. But intelligence alone would not save her. Because soon, the kingdom would descend into another brutal struggle for the throne. And Cleopatra would find herself facing an impossible choice. Rule Egypt. Or die trying. In 51 BC, Cleopatra became Queen of Egypt. She was only 18 years old. By tradition, she was required to share the throne with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, who was barely a child. On paper, they ruled together. In reality, they were enemies from the very beginning. Behind the young king stood a powerful group of advisors who saw Cleopatra as a dangerous obstacle. They wanted control of Egypt's wealth, its armies, and its future. And Cleopatra was far too intelligent to be controlled. At first, she tried to rule alongside them. But tensions quickly exploded. Official decrees stopped including her name. Her allies disappeared from positions of power. Her authority was stripped away piece by piece. Then came the final blow. Cleopatra was forced to flee Egypt. The queen of the richest kingdom in the Mediterranean suddenly found herself homeless, powerless, and hunted. For many rulers, exile was the end of the story. For Cleopatra, it was only the beginning. While her enemies celebrated in Alexandria, Cleopatra was already planning her return. In the deserts east of Egypt, she gathered loyal supporters, hired soldiers, and began building an army. Day by day, she prepared for a civil war against her own brother. The stakes could not have been higher. If she failed, she would almost certainly be executed. If she succeeded, she would reclaim the throne. Everything now depended on a single opportunity. And then, fate delivered one. In 48 BC, a civil war on the other side of the Mediterranean suddenly changed everything. The most powerful man in the Roman world arrived in Egypt. His name was Julius Caesar. Fresh from his victory against his rival Pompey, Caesar entered Alexandria expecting to settle a political dispute. Instead, he was about to meet the woman who would change his life forever. Cleopatra immediately understood what others failed to see. Roman support was the key to her survival. But there was one problem. Her enemies controlled the city. The palace was heavily guarded. And Caesar was surrounded by men loyal to her brother. Getting an audience with him seemed impossible. So Cleopatra devised one of the boldest moves in ancient history. Under the cover of darkness, she secretly entered Alexandria. According to ancient accounts, she had herself wrapped inside a large carpet, or possibly a linen sack, and smuggled directly into Caesar's private chambers. Imagine the scene. The most powerful man in the world is discussing politics when servants arrive carrying what appears to be an ordinary bundle. The package is placed before him. The ropes are loosened. The fabric unfolds. And out steps Cleopatra. 21 years old. Fearless. Confident. And willing to risk everything on a single moment. Caesar was impressed immediately. Not merely by her appearance. But by her courage. Her intelligence. Her presence. Most rulers begged Caesar for help. Cleopatra offered him a partnership. The meeting changed the course of history. What began as a political alliance soon became something far more personal. Caesar backed Cleopatra's claim to the throne. Roman soldiers fought on her behalf. Her enemies were defeated. And after months of conflict, Cleopatra emerged victorious. The exiled queen had reclaimed her kingdom. But she wasn't finished. Soon, she would give birth to a son called Caesar Ion, a child she claimed was Caesar's heir. And for the first time, Cleopatra began dreaming of something even greater than ruling Egypt. She began imagining a future where her dynasty could stand alongside Rome itself. It was an extraordinary vision. But dreams that ambitious have a way of creating powerful enemies. And in Rome, danger was already gathering. Because Julius Caesar's rise to absolute power was making him enemies everywhere. And very soon, blood would spill on the floor of the Roman Senate. For a few brief years, it seemed as though Cleopatra had achieved the impossible. With Julius Caesar's support, she had reclaimed her throne, defeated her enemies, and restored stability to Egypt. The desperate exile who had once fled into the desert was now one of the most powerful women in the Mediterranean. But Cleopatra wanted more than survival. She wanted security. And she understood something that few rulers dared to admit. Egypt's future would be decided in Rome. The relationship between Cleopatra and Julius Caesar quickly became one of the most talked about alliances in the ancient world. To some, it was a love story. To others, it was a calculated political partnership. Most likely, it was both. What is certain is that each benefited enormously from the other. Caesar gained access to Egypt's immense wealth and strategic position. Cleopatra gained the protection of the most powerful man on earth. Soon, she gave birth to a son named Caesar Ion. Cleopatra boldly claimed that Caesar was the child's father. If true, the implications were enormous. For the first time, there existed a child who connected the bloodlines of Egypt and Rome. A child who might one day inherit both worlds. Whether Caesar truly intended such a future remains a mystery. But Cleopatra certainly understood the possibilities. In 46 BC, she traveled to Rome itself. For many Romans, her arrival was shocking. Egyptian queens were supposed to stay in Egypt. Yet here was Cleopatra living openly under Caesar's protection, walking through the heart of the Republic while rumors swirled around her. Some admired her intelligence and confidence. Others feared her influence. And many hated her. To Caesar's enemies, Cleopatra represented everything they despised. Foreign. Powerful. Ambitious. Dangerous. As tensions grew inside Rome, so did the whispers. Whispers that Caesar wanted to make himself king. Whispers that Cleopatra hoped to place Caesar Ion on a throne beside him. Whispers that the Roman Republic itself was in danger. Then, on the Ides of March, 44 BC, everything came crashing down. Julius Caesar entered the Senate house. He never walked out. 23 stab wounds ended the life of the most powerful man in Rome. The shockwave spread across the ancient world. For Cleopatra, the consequences were immediate. Her protector was gone. Her future was uncertain. And once again, enemies surrounded her. Many rulers would have panicked. Others would have hidden. Cleopatra began calculating. Because she knew something important. Power had not disappeared from Rome. It had simply changed hands. As rival factions fought for control of Caesar's legacy, one man emerged as a key player. A brilliant general. A fearless soldier. And one of Caesar's closest allies. His name was Mark Antony. Their first major encounter would become one of the most famous meetings in history. In 41 BC, Antony summoned Cleopatra to answer accusations that she had failed to support Rome during its civil wars. To many observers, it looked like a command. A queen being ordered to appear before a Roman master. But Cleopatra had no intention of arriving as a subordinate. She intended to arrive as a legend. When Antony waited for her in the city of Tarsus, Cleopatra made sure he would never forget the moment. Ancient writers described a spectacle unlike anything the Roman general had ever seen. A magnificent ship glided across the water. Its sails were purple. Its oars flashed with silver. The air was filled with perfume. Musicians played as servants dressed like gods lined the decks. And at the center of it all sat Cleopatra. Not as a queen, but as the living embodiment of the goddess Isis. The message was unmistakable. She wasn't coming to ask for power. She already possessed it. Antony was captivated. But not because Cleopatra was beautiful. Rome was full of beautiful women. What Antony encountered was something far rarer. A ruler who matched his intelligence, his ambition, and his appetite for greatness. What began as diplomacy soon became one of history's most famous relationships. Together, Antony and Cleopatra formed a partnership that would dominate the Eastern Mediterranean. They spent winters in Alexandria, raised a family together, and built a political alliance powerful enough to challenge Rome itself. Cleopatra gave Antony 3 children. Antony rewarded her with vast territories across the Eastern Mediterranean. Their wealth became legendary. Their influence seemed limitless. For the second time in her life, Cleopatra had aligned herself with the most powerful man in the Roman world. But this time, the stakes were far higher. Because their growing power was beginning to terrify Rome. And far away, a patient young politician named Octavian was watching everything. Waiting. Planning. Preparing. The collision between these 3 figures would soon determine the fate of Egypt, Rome, and the ancient world itself. By the late 30s BC, Cleopatra had achieved what few people in history ever have. She had survived exile, defeated her rivals, outlived political conspiracies, won the support of Julius Caesar, and after his death, formed an alliance with Mark Antony. Against all odds, the young queen who had once fled into the desert now stood at the center of one of the most powerful political partnerships in the ancient world. This was the peak of Cleopatra's power. And for a brief moment, it seemed as if nothing could stop her. Together, Cleopatra and Antony controlled vast territories stretching across the Eastern Mediterranean. Egypt, Cyprus, parts of Syria, Phoenicia, Cilicia, and regions reaching deep into the Near East. The wealth flowing through their territories was staggering. Gold, grain, trade, taxes. Nearly every major trade route in the Eastern Mediterranean passed through lands under their influence. Alexandria became the beating heart of this growing empire. Its harbors were crowded with merchant ships from across the known world. Its libraries attracted scholars and philosophers. Its markets overflowed with goods from Africa, Arabia, India, and beyond. Visitors arriving in the city often described it as one of the richest and most magnificent places on earth. And at the center of it all sat Cleopatra. Not merely as Queen of Egypt, but increasingly as a ruler with ambitions far greater than Egypt alone. She understood something that many Roman politicians refused to admit. The future of power was shifting eastward. And she intended to shape that future herself. Together, Antony and Cleopatra built more than a romance. They built a vision. A vision of a new political order centered not in Rome, but in Alexandria. A world where Egypt stood as an equal partner to Rome. Perhaps even its successor. To celebrate their growing power, Antony granted Cleopatra vast new territories during a ceremony that became known as the Donations of Alexandria. Before enormous crowds, kingdoms were distributed like gifts. Their children received royal titles. Their son Alexander Helios was proclaimed ruler of distant lands. Their daughter Cleopatra Selene received territories of her own. And Caesar Ion, the son Cleopatra claimed was fathered by Julius Caesar, was declared King of Kings. To Cleopatra, it was a declaration of destiny. To many Romans, it looked like a declaration of war. The message seemed clear. Antony and Cleopatra were building a dynasty. A dynasty that could one day rival Rome itself. For Cleopatra, this was the closest she would ever come to achieving her greatest dream. Not simply ruling Egypt, but reshaping the ancient world. The celebrations in Alexandria became legendary. Banquets lasted for days. Wine flowed endlessly. Musicians performed through the night. Foreign ambassadors competed for influence at court. The city glittered with wealth. And everywhere people looked, they saw symbols of power. Cleopatra presented herself as the living incarnation of Isis. Antony embraced comparisons to Dionysus. Together, they appeared less like rulers and more like gods walking among mortals. Yet while Alexandria celebrated, Rome watched. And in Rome, the spectacle was causing outrage. One man in particular saw danger where others saw luxury. His name was Octavian, the adopted son and political heir of Julius Caesar. Unlike Antony, Octavian was cold, patient, disciplined. He rarely acted without calculation. And he understood that defeating Cleopatra on the battlefield would be difficult. So he decided to destroy her somewhere else first. In the minds of the Roman people, Octavian launched one of the most effective propaganda campaigns in ancient history. He portrayed Antony not as a Roman hero, but as a man corrupted by a foreign queen. A man who had abandoned Rome for luxury. A man who had surrendered his loyalty to Cleopatra. Across the Republic, stories spread. Some were exaggerated. Some were outright lies. But they were effective. Romans began to fear Cleopatra. Not because she commanded armies, but because they believed she was trying to control Rome itself. The queen who had once charmed Caesar and won the heart of Antony was now being transformed into Rome's greatest villain. And as public opinion turned against them, a collision became inevitable. The struggle was no longer about love, or politics, or territory. It had become a battle for the future of the Roman world. And soon, the fate of Cleopatra's empire would be decided by fire, steel, and war. By 31 BC, the Mediterranean world stood on the edge of war. For years, tensions between Octavian and the alliance of Antony and Cleopatra had been growing. Now there was no turning back. One side would emerge as master of the Roman world. The other would be destroyed. Across the Mediterranean, armies mobilized. Warships filled the harbors. Supplies were gathered. Generals prepared for what many believed would be the greatest confrontation of their age. The fate of empires now rested on a single battle. The showdown came near the western coast of Greece, at a place called Actium. On one side stood Octavian's fleet, commanded by his brilliant general Agrippa. Disciplined, experienced, prepared. On the other stood the combined forces of Mark Antony and Cleopatra. Together they commanded hundreds of warships and tens of thousands of soldiers. On paper, the battle could have gone either way. For months, both sides maneuvered for advantage. Disease spread through camps. Food supplies dwindled. Morale fluctuated. Every day increased the pressure. Every day raised the stakes. Then, on September 2, 31 BC, the battle finally began. The sea erupted into chaos. Massive warships collided. Arrows darkened the sky. Flaming projectiles streaked across the water. The sounds of battle echoed for miles. For a time, victory still seemed possible. Antony's forces fought fiercely. His commanders held their positions. And despite Octavian's confidence, the outcome remained uncertain. Then something happened that historians still debate more than 2,000 years later. Suddenly, Cleopatra's fleet broke formation. Her ships turned and began sailing away from the battlefield. At first, many soldiers could hardly believe what they were seeing. Confusion spread across the fleet. Was it a retreat? A planned maneuver? A desperate escape? No one knew. What happened next shocked everyone. Mark Antony saw Cleopatra's ships leaving. Faced with an impossible choice, he made a decision that would define his legacy forever. He abandoned the battle. Leaving behind thousands of men and hundreds of ships, Antony boarded a vessel and followed Cleopatra. In an instant, the command structure collapsed. The army was stunned. The fleet lost direction. Morale shattered. Whatever chance Antony and Cleopatra had of victory disappeared. Octavian's forces seized the opportunity. One by one, enemy ships were surrounded, captured, or destroyed. By the end of the battle, the alliance that had once threatened to dominate the Roman world lay in ruins. The dream was over. The vision of an Eastern empire centered in Alexandria was dying before their eyes. And for the first time in years, Cleopatra found herself facing a reality she could not control. Defeat. The retreat back to Egypt was long and grim. Gone were the celebrations. Gone were the triumphs. Gone was the confidence that had defined their rise. Antony and Cleopatra returned to Alexandria knowing that Octavian would not stop. He had waited years for this moment. And now victory was within his grasp. Across the Mediterranean, cities began switching sides. Former allies abandoned them. Support evaporated. The empire they had built together was collapsing from every direction. Meanwhile, Octavian advanced relentlessly toward Egypt. His armies moved closer with every passing month. The walls were closing in. The options were disappearing. And somewhere in the distance, Cleopatra could already see the future approaching. A future filled with defeat, humiliation, and perhaps something even worse. Because if Octavian captured her alive, he had no intention of treating her as a queen. He intended to display her as a trophy, parading her through the streets of Rome before cheering crowds. For Cleopatra, that fate was unthinkable. The woman who had once dreamed of ruling the Roman world was now fighting for something far more basic. Her dignity, her legacy, and ultimately, her survival. After the disaster at Actium, the collapse came quickly. For years, Cleopatra and Mark Antony had stood at the center of one of the most powerful alliances in the ancient world. Now they were watching everything fall apart. Former allies abandoned them. Cities surrendered to Octavian without a fight. Armies defected. Treasuries emptied. The empire they had spent years building was crumbling before their eyes. And there was nothing they could do to stop it. In the summer of 30 BC, Octavian's forces finally entered Egypt. The end had arrived. Alexandria, the glittering city that had once symbolized Cleopatra's power and ambition, was now surrounded. Panic spread through the streets. The royal court descended into chaos. Everywhere, people understood the same terrible truth. The last days of Ptolemaic Egypt had begun. Cleopatra refused to surrender immediately. Even now, she searched desperately for a way to save her kingdom. She attempted negotiations. She explored possible escape routes. She even considered securing the future of her children. But with every passing day, her options disappeared. Octavian was closing in. And unlike Caesar or Antony, he could not be persuaded. He could not be charmed. He could not be manipulated. For the first time in her life, Cleopatra faced an opponent completely beyond her control. Meanwhile, Mark Antony was unraveling. The proud Roman general who had once commanded vast armies now found himself trapped between defeat and despair. Then came the rumor that shattered him. A false report reached Antony claiming that Cleopatra had taken her own life. The news devastated him. Believing the woman he loved was dead, Antony made a tragic decision. He fell upon his own sword. But death did not come immediately. Mortally wounded, he was carried to Cleopatra's refuge. Ancient accounts describe one final heartbreaking scene. Antony was lifted through a window and brought into Cleopatra's presence. There, in her arms, the man who had once dreamed of ruling the Roman world slowly slipped away. For Cleopatra, it was more than the loss of a lover. It was the collapse of the future she had spent years trying to build. Antony was gone. Her empire was gone. And soon, her freedom would be gone as well. Only one choice remained. Shortly afterward, Cleopatra met Octavian. The encounter confirmed her worst fears. Though Octavian treated her with outward respect, she quickly realized his true intentions. He planned to take her to Rome. Not as a queen. Not as an ally. But as a prisoner. A trophy. A living symbol of his victory. For most people, survival would have been enough. For Cleopatra, humiliation was unacceptable. She had ruled as a queen. She would not live as a spectacle. In the days that followed, Cleopatra made her decision. The exact details remain one of history's greatest mysteries. Ancient writers tell different versions of the story. Some claimed a venomous Egyptian cobra was smuggled into her chamber hidden inside a basket of figs. Others suggested poison concealed in a comb or hairpin. The truth may never be known. What matters is the choice itself. On August 1230 BC, Cleopatra withdrew into her private chambers with two of her most loyal attendants. Outside, Roman soldiers waited. Inside, Egypt's last pharaoh prepared for the end. Hours later, the doors were forced open. The Romans rushed inside. They were too late. Cleopatra was dead. Whether by snakebite, poison, or another method, the result was the same. The woman who had captivated Caesar. The woman who had shared Antony's dreams. The woman who had challenged Rome itself. Was gone. She was only 39 years old. With her death, a dynasty that had ruled Egypt for nearly 3 centuries came to an end. The age of the pharaohs was over. Egypt would never again be an independent kingdom. Instead, it became a province of the Roman Empire. Yet there was one thing Octavian never obtained. He won Egypt. He won the war. He won the empire. But he never got the satisfaction of parading Cleopatra through the streets of Rome. In the end, the final move belonged to her. The queen who had spent her entire life fighting for control chose the one thing no conqueror could take away. Her own fate. And with that final act, Cleopatra ensured that she would be remembered not as a prisoner, but as a legend. Her story is not merely a tale of power. It is a tale of ambition, of risk, of triumph, and ultimately, of ruin. The rise was extraordinary. The fall was devastating. And that is why, more than 2,000 years later, the legend of Cleopatra endures. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe and turn on notifications. Next we'll cover another ruler, who tasted both glory and total destruction. Comment below. Who should we do next?